Good morning, everyone. I'm Mary McGuire, Director of Public and Government Affairs at AAA Northeast, and I'm so pleased to welcome a public official with whom we've been working for many years, Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey, who was elected in 2010. Prior to his election, DA Morrissey served as the state senator from the Norfolk and Plymouth District from 1992 to 2010. He also served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives from 1977 to 1992. DA Morrissey is a UMass Amherst and Suffolk Law School graduate. In office for more than a decade now, DA Morrissey and his team have launched a number of traffic safety initiatives, and that's what we'll be discussing with him today. Welcome to you, DA Morrissey, and thanks so much for being with us here this morning. It's great to have you.
I guess it's to give the history. I guess we have known each other, worked with each other for many years, Mary. I'm happy that as district attorney, I've been able to continue that partnership with AAA. It's been really invaluable.
Well, we certainly agree. I mean, we've worked together on impaired driving initiatives, distracted driving, and now we actually have a new initiative that I'm going to ask you to talk about, and that is our Shifting Gears campaign, which is where we teach teens in schools across Massachusetts about the dangers of driving high in the wake of recreational marijuana being approved here in the Commonwealth. And we are so happy to have our Shifting Gears program be part of your office's Team Rival. So tell us, if you would, about Team Rival, DA Morrissey, and why you thought it was important to develop this program, and how is it making a difference for Norfolk County teens?
Well, I think like AAA, we share the one common thought is the earlier we can educate people and the sooner we reach them, the better off we're going to be. So I know for many years, even in the legislature, AAA had always dealt with issues, whether it be hands-free with phones or speed limit issues. I mean, the things that make the roads safer for all people in the Commonwealth, but focusing on young people is where we really have to start the education when they first get on the road. And so we have taken a look at some of the history that we've had. When I came into office, there's two big killers in Norfolk County. Number one is, no surprise, would be drug overdoses. And number two would be we see almost one death every week on the roads of Norfolk County. Well, I'm sure we can talk about that later, but we do have a number of programs that get into the schools, whether it be dealing with privacy issues and computer issues, sexting, teen dating, and substance abuse issues, as well as distracted driving. And so out of that, some of the information we've gathered, we started a program called Teen Rival. And we've tried to take all the high schools in the county and we pair them against traditional rivals. Like I grew up in the city of Quincy, as did my wife. She went to Quincy High, I went to North Quincy High. And they have been traditional rivals for many years. And no one has played football against each other longer than Needham and Wellesley. I mean, that is the game. And so there are communities that actually have, that rivalry between them, and it's gone on for many years. And so we've taken those, some of the students in the school, some of the activists and others, the teachers that sent us, and with the help of AAA, like Arbella and the Mass Office of Victim Advocates and the Drunk Driving Trust Fund, we've been able to put together some programming over the years. And we try to stay current and bring the most information, the current information to those programs. So we hope that these, in many cases, are student leaders who, if you train them, they will go back and they will pass the word in school. So Team Rival sets up a series of challenges. And one of them is they used to have an online program that you had to go through. Arbella had been one of the sponsors to show what impaired driving could do to you. But the more people in your school that took the program, the more points you got against your rival. And so just getting people to sit and through, in this case, because of the pandemic, you can't have as much touchy-feely in-person stuff. A lot of it has to be by Zoom. So we've had to get a little bit more creative. And we used to have a ropes challenge with the Habermuck YMCA, another partner, so that building teamwork and leadership was important. So the idea that distracted driving, it used to be the old days was students against drunk driving, SAD, became pretty much students against distracted driving, and that really covers a big gamut of the problem. And as you said, it was no surprise, I guess, or maybe it was a little bit of a surprise, that alcohol still plays a role in deaths on the highway in Norfolk County. And obviously, there is a test for alcohol. If you have alcohol impairment, that there is a chemical test that you can take. Sadly, with the advent of marijuana now being legal, which I think people have a feeling a little bit more comfortable on its use, I don't know that people fully appreciate the fact that it can also equally cause as much impairment on the roads and is a danger to themselves and to others. And I think young children, particularly under the age of 21, it's against the law to smoke marijuana, just as it is against the law to drink. And so the penalties tend to be much harsher against those individuals who are younger, who break the law. I mean, our goal has always been, we don't want to sound like we're prudes, but we try to educate people to make good decisions. And that's what this is really all about. And I know that you people want to give people as much information as you can so they can make the appropriate decisions. Be a leader, say no, be a designated driver. And, if you're going to smoke marijuana, and I understand, and I know that may happen for younger people, but don't get behind the wheel of a car. So the new program that you have is just one more kind of arsenal and the tools in the toolbox that we try to educate young people and get them excited about competing against each other, learning something, and then going back and spreading the word.
Well, I think it's terrific, and we're just really pleased at AAA to be part of Team Rival. And again, it gives us an opportunity to educate teens, as you say, through our Shifting Gears program, to let them know that driving high is not safe. So really happy to be working
I've
together.
I've seen the video. The good news is that it also saves me some time and money to partner, because you guys did all the production costs and we handled it. We help push out the distribution, which I think works well for AAA, which is I think why this partnership also helps work. But it's again, we've had some luck. Bella used to bring the van, the Distractology van, and they could go through. I think they just retired that. Sorry to say, the kids used to get a kick out of that. And we've done a lot of different things, and this is really great because it's one more, especially with the pandemic. I think this couldn't have happened at a better time for us.
Well, I certainly agree. And I agree with you about the Arbella van and the other simulators too. They really do a great job of educating people of all ages. So you talked, DA Morrissey, a couple of minutes ago about drunk driving, and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about impairment. So Norfolk County is home to many major roadways and highways, and you've shared your numbers with us. 43 traffic fatalities in 2020, with 17 of those, almost 40%, related to impairment. We talk a lot about distracted driving, and that's a really important conversation as well. But drunk and impaired driving is still responsible for more than a third of highway deaths across this country every year. So what is your office doing to combat this trend right now?
Well, again, this is one part of it. The Team Rival and your partnership, that's one small piece of it. We've been able to have a segregated unit in the district attorney's offices, 8 or 10 very trained, experienced attorneys who go out and when there's a serious car accident, often they don't know whether it's serious bodily injury or death, but they're on call 24 hours a day. They rotate the phone, what they call the motor vehicle hotline. And we try to encourage the attorneys to go out to a scene for a couple of reasons. It's a good opportunity for them. If you grew up in Quincy and you find an accident in Franklin, you may not understand the lay of the land. Or, you go to Wellesley and then there's a serious accident there. So for an attorney to be able to be at or on the scene shortly after the event happens is very critical, because you get to see the skid marks, you get to see where the cars came to rest. And you get a better feel. You get a chance to talk to police officers. And occasionally they ask you a question like, how do you look at this? And they may have a question about a charging request, or the police at the ultimate make the decision who to charge. But we have this team of lawyers on the motor vehicle homicide team that go out on a regular basis. They meet, they train. Adam Lally runs the unit. He's been around for a good many years, tries a lot of serious cases. And we also have specialized victim advocates in the sense that if you think about it, we only get 10 or 12 homicides a year. We're getting 43 last year in what was really a down year. If you think about it, a lot of people weren't traveling as much. They're working from home. So, we average usually a little bit more motor vehicle homicide. You touched upon the roadway network. If you think about Norfolk County, which is kind of a rarity, then you said the roadway network. I'm old, so I'd say the Southeast Expressway, but that's Route 93, and then 128 and Route 3, and then you have Route 24 and 495 and Route 95, and you have Route 1 and 109 and 1A, and so never mind all the cross streets, the major roads, the 123s, the 139s, and all the Parkway and Boulevard systems. So when someone's in an accident, it's generally a higher speed accident causing more damage or carnage. And I know you focused on just the deaths, but there are hundreds of others serious bodily injury crashes. And so dealing with those families because their loved ones have either been maimed or killed, and trying to get grief counseling for them. We have, with the assistance of Mass Office of Victim Assistance, we have received grants so they can work with families in those situations to push them towards counseling, grief counseling, to show them maybe how to get a compensation from the Victims Trust Fund. And so having that team together helps us deal with just that one aspect of when people have to find themselves. We don't deal with the defendants, we only deal with the victims. And when the families find themselves involved in a court incident where they are the victim of it, then we try to walk them through the process, hold their hand, give them advice and guidance, and make sure they understand what's going to happen. And I think that serves us well. I mean, sadly, if you think about last year, April, I know we were talking now in March, and it's about 1 year since things really started closing down. But last April, there was hardly anybody driving on the roads of the Commonwealth. If you think about it, the place was almost a ghost town. Well, it might surprise you to learn, because it surprised me, that there was more motor vehicle accidents last April than there were the April before. And I think part of that was people were driving extremely fast on the roads. And it's the only thing that we could come up with. That we kind of were blown away that there's more people dying on the roads when they weren't driving. So
we had the same reaction, DA Morrissey. In fact, we've done a couple of press events with Mass State Police and with Jonathan Gulliver, the State Highway Administrator, on the fact that we've seen a tremendous, dramatic rise in speeding across the Commonwealth during the pandemic. That's been eased somewhat by the fact that many people are now going back to work and they're on the roads. We're seeing a little bit more congestion, but Mass State Police had written a record number of tickets, not only for people speeding, but for people driving in excess of 100 miles an hour or more on our roadways, which is so frightening. And as somebody who's been a proponent for a primary seatbelt law for many years, more important than ever for people to buckle up. But you are absolutely right. You have so many high-speed roadways and highways in Norfolk County, and speed absolutely has been a factor over this past year in terms of the numbers we're seeing.
And you say the seatbelt law. It's funny, that reminds me, we have gone back a few years, because you guys were lobbying many years ago when I was in the legislature. That was one of the top priorities for many years, and I think that saved hundreds of lives in the Commonwealth. So people look at the individual liberties per se, and that's the whole idea about they should be able to talk on a phone whenever they want. Well, you can't talk on a phone, and going to hands-free, I think, makes some sense. I guess absent a total ban, and I don't want to sound self-righteous because I probably have my own problems, but getting that message out to people about using hands-free has been an important part of the message that AAA has been doing. And ideally, with young people, we don't want them talking on the phone at all. We want them to learn the skills of how to drive, to pay attention around them. The video that you do have produced, Shifting Gears, talks about that, about just being aware of your surroundings and paying attention. And I think we had the law where you can't have, if you're under the age of, 17, you can't have another person in the car until you have 6 months driving under your belt. And that whole idea was to make sure you paid attention. And it's funny, though, I did amend that bill when that was going through. And the reason was I had to listen to my grandmother, and my parents give me a hard time saying, if we want to send our kids to school with you, and I'm talking about your brother and sister, and you have the license, and you're taking them because we're not driving them. So we did amend that law to allow a family member to be in the car, but that was the only exception. And if your parents have enough confidence in your ability to drive, you have to at least let them make that decision. But that goes back many years, Mary. So it's something that has saved lives, though. And I know that the fight is on. I mean, this is why you and I are having this conversation today. It's second largest killer of people in the county are automobile fatalities, and we're still fighting the fight.
Absolutely. We're still fighting the fight. And we filed the primary seatbelt law at AAA again this session. And, it's interesting. You're talking about the junior operator laws. There is absolutely no doubt that passenger restriction you're talking about, that you were involved in amending and passing, that the restriction, the nighttime travel restriction for junior operators in Massachusetts, all of those things have led to a dramatic decline in teen deaths over the past 20 years. And certainly the fact also that junior operators, no cell phone use at all, only in an emergency, not hands-free, not anything. So that I think has made a big difference as well.
We put more of a burden on parents, if I recall, that now they have to. I mean, my parents always wanted me to drive. I was very fortunate that when we were learning how to drive, that they would say, "Hey, you can drive." You know what I mean? And they would spend time and they would teach me. We're fortunate that I had parents who were interested and could do that. And I think they liked the fact that one of the kids was probably driving, because it was go to the store and get the milk, and so he didn't mind doing it because you got a chance to drive the car finally when you had a license. And then it was take your brothers and sisters to the movies, go pick them up. You want to use the car. So having more experience, I think now we require more hours behind the wheel, not only with a driving school, but we require an adult or a guardian to certify that a child, young adult taking a license test has had more time behind the wheel and training. I think that has helped as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the additional requirements for driver education have definitely made a big difference. So you're right about all of that. We've made a lot of great progress in the Commonwealth, in terms of keeping teens safer. So you talked about distraction just a couple of minutes ago. And I did notice that when I was looking at your numbers that you had 7 traffic deaths related to distracted driving in 2020. And I'm wondering what you think the impact of the still relatively new distracted driving law. It's been just over a year now since the end of last February that we've had the new law in the books. I know I still see a lot of people holding the phones. I've talked to police who say they're still seeing a lot of people holding the phones. We've had a significant number of citations written, but what are you seeing in Norfolk County, and what would you like to send to people in terms of a message?
Well, there's still, I think, a little bit of a loophole as well. You may not be able to talk on the phone, but the phone actually is multifunctional, and so it provides directions and other information. So, there are some other reasons why you might see someone holding a phone. Sorry to say, it's a hard law to enforce. I think the message is correct, and it's really just a difficult law to enforce, and it's hard for me to say. I guess it's when you say empirically looking at data, it's hard to say. How can you tell if it's a success or not? I think eventually you'd have to take a look at numbers over a period of years and compare to states that don't have the same laws in the books, and try to do that comparison. Because how do you know about the life that you don't save? You only know when someone dies, and you don't know whether or not that education you're providing people is actually sending that right message, and they're not doing that risky behavior. And so therefore they won't be a statistic. So I think it's going to take a little while to get the data together to be able to make that much stronger argument. But one life save is a big plus for me, and I think this messaging, I'm convinced that education of young people is still the way to go. It's the way to go on a lot of things in society, and drug use being one of them. I think just people's we talked about young kids about safe dating relationships and domestic violence issues, and obviously just making good decisions in general, and a good decision behind the wheel of a car. We always tell people, I tell my own kids and other people, my parents, I guess, put the message in me was we can deal with the small problems, but the big problems have big consequences. And when you're driving an automobile that weighs 2,000 pounds, it doesn't take much to make a small mistake that can have dramatic implications and even cause deaths to someone. So it's something that we have to spend the time trying to continue to work on kids. And I think kids are happy to hear the message. The bigger thing is to try to get those kids who are truly leaders to be able to, and I used to, Betty Ford used to say, or Nancy Reagan, say no to drugs. I mean, I know it's kind of a corny message when Nancy Reagan had the war on drugs and say no to drugs. But, all we're trying to do is get the message to people, hey, get to 21 and get educated about your surrounding, what's going on, about alcohol use, about drug use. I said, someday you'll be a parent too. And your parents aren't as dumb as you think they are. They've all grown up in the last 20 to 40 years, and they know something too. So that's one of the reasons why I guess in the auto licensing bill, I think we required parents even to sit down and take a 2-hour class, and so they understood that we would, what we're trying to teach children, so they had an idea of what they should be working on as well. So I think we just have to kind of stay the course and try to continue to educate people. It's our best defense.
The 2-hour parent class in Massachusetts is such a great class. I took it. You can't enforce the rules at home if you don't know what the rules of the Commonwealth are. And I think that's one of the best things about the class, that it really makes parents aware. Not every state has a parent class. I think it's a great addition that's really contributed to the safety of teens here in Massachusetts, because after all, as you say, what is more important than the safety of our children? I mean, I agree with you. I was so happy when my kids started driving, because they could start, driving each other, to sports practice and take on some of the errands for the family and that type of thing. But, you want to make sure that your kids are safe, that they're driving safely, that they're buckled up. one of the things that I heard you mention is polysubstance use involving crashes. And again, looking at your numbers in Norfolk County, of the 17 impairment-related crashes, 8 involved drugs alone or drugs in combination with alcohol as a source of the impairment. And I'd love to ask you about that, because that's something that's really a growing concern here in Massachusetts, as you know, with the advent of recreational marijuana. And it's one of the things that we talk about a lot with AAA. At AAA, how much of a concern is that polysubstance abuse right now, especially when it's mixed with driving?
I'm more concerned on our ability to measure the involvement of drugs and alcohol. Alcohol, we have a test, and for marijuana, they've not yet developed a test by which you can determine whether someone's driving under the influence. So some of our numbers are either self-admissions or through blood tests that we have. We've compiled the data. I think the statistics are probably much higher than what even I have given you based upon our 1-year experience. And that's troubling. I mean, the fear of you're driving under the influence, you can be stopped and have a breathalyzer, you lose your license for 180 days. That has a little bit of a sting to it, and I think people appreciate that. If you're a person under the age of 21, it's a little bit of a bigger sting. I think you lose your license for a year. But we're trying to do the same thing with marijuana use. But again, there are companies, and I wish I could invest in one of them, who are trying to develop a test that would measure marijuana use. You can tell whether someone may have been smoking marijuana. Some of it is obviously by smell, but you don't know how recent it is. And measuring that impact, it's always about. I tell kids sometimes with alcohol, it's not against the law necessarily to drink and drive. It's against the law to drink and drive while impaired. And alcohol is the first step towards impairment. And so some people respond better than others with alcohol. And that's why they've set limits that if you blow more than a 0.08, the federal government is pushing even a lower limit. So that's at least some evidence of impairment. That changes the whole dynamic. Then the burden shifts to that person to say, hey, even though your alcohol limit was, over 0.08, the burden is down on you. You're presumed to have been driving impaired because you have reached a chemical limit of alcohol in your blood. I mean, we need to develop some of the same standards for particularly for marijuana use. The other drugs, anecdotally, when someone is in a serious accident, they draw blood. We can find out whether or not they have fentanyl or other drugs in their system, and that's how we've gathered some of that data. But that's just, it's not something that is collected easily, like alcohol refusals or convictions. So I think we have a lot of work to do in that area, and I think some of it is the scientific community has to step up and help us out here, because on one side of the house we have alcohol. I'd like to have the same type of penalty if there was a test where you could say to someone, hey, I want you to blow in a tube or do this, and so we can check whether or not you're under the impairment of marijuana. If you don't do it, you're going to lose your license. We got to get to that point where there is some measured objective standard that we can force onto particularly young drivers so they understand how serious we are about this.
Yeah, as we say at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety, there's no 0.08 for cannabis at this point, and it's tough because it impacts and affects different people differently. So it's been very difficult. I agree with you. We have less than 10 minutes left, DA Morrissey. I want to ask you about some of the great public awareness campaigns that you've launched in Norfolk County, because I feel that awareness and education is so important. It's something that we really value at AAA. So your Observe, Don't Overserve campaign, and I actually think we had participated in that. I think we had done some coasters or something that were distributed at some local establishments with the message of Observe, Don't Overserve. And also your Hero Designated Driver campaigns. If you could talk about those for a couple of minutes. I think it's always great to spread the word of campaigns that have worked and been effective.
Yeah, I mean, I like to think they could be more effective, but particularly having worked in the legislature, which I think serves me well, is that I've become very in touch with a lot of different groups, and like AAA and others, and I've had to work with the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission for many years. And so I was chairman of the committee that oversaw the alcohol industry, and so I've had good contact with the restaurants and the business and the service industries that serve alcohol. So that has, I think, been beneficial to my role as district attorney, because we rely upon some of the information they gather through bars that may have been implicated by the last call legislation that we have. And we focus on again, we don't want to ruin anybody's party. We don't want to ruin anybody's business. And we understand that people like to have a good time. And I think there are 2 points that we tried to focus on. One was that the people who are servers, we do actually, and we paid for tips training, which is server training. And so that they are the safe server training, so they can identify signs of impairment. And we have put some of our money up from drug forfeiture for the police, obviously. We can educate people, and we paid professionals to come in and train large groups of people in the restaurant industry. Of course, the insurance carriers also do a good job because most of them give you a discount, and they don't want you to have someone serving alcohol unless they are tip certified. But we have tried to encourage that training by paying for that and making it free and available to businesses in Norfolk County. And the second one is, after you have a trained server, especially around the holidays, that we have the observe, don't overserve. We want people to enjoy themselves. We're not prudes. People are going to have a drink or two, maybe even three. And if they're impaired, you have to, the first line of defense is always that server. And so, we put those little coasters out, reminding people, observe them, don't overserve them, send them home in a cab. And finally, even for young people as well, that it's always hard to be a leader. And it's we always thought that the person who says that they're truly going to be the designated driver, they should be the hero, because their friends may all be having a heck of a time with themselves. They all may be drinking, but they're not putting themselves at risk because they have a trusted friend who has stepped forward and said, "Okay, I'll take the hit. I'll drive home. I'll make sure everybody gets home in one piece. I won't drink alcohol, and I'll make sure that you guys can have a good time, and I'll be the responsible party." And we encourage that, and even teens, again, that's a lesson that they should learn going into young adulthood. That I can remember my parents. This is, I think they were forerunners, even growing up in the '60s. They had a friend of theirs, our neighbor, who just didn't drink. And the yacht club used to have dances in those days and parties. And my father used to love to go out and have a few beers and say, "Well, Fran was driving." He said, "This is great." He said, "I can go and have a couple of beers and not worry about it. Fran's driving, going to get us home." And that's, that was, I guess, my introduction to designated drivers, that they always used to fight to have Fran pick him up, so that he was a teetotaler, and that was great. They loved it. Fran had a great time. They had all have a great time, and that it's something that was, we try to encourage other people, even from days on to encourage that message. I think is something that's important. That's why we try to encourage people. Hey, if you can step forward, it's not always easy. It may mean that you might not have as much fun, but at least you're going to know that your friends are coming home safe that night, and you have a much better chance of getting them home.
So important. Yeah. And it's so great how the designated driver has really become part of our culture, part of our vernacular. My kids in their 20s take it very seriously. And now we're seeing the rise of the designated texter too, in the wake of all of the concern over distracted driving. So hopefully we can get the designated texter as part of the culture as firmly as we see the designated driver attitude entrenched, which I think is a great thing. We just have a few minutes left. DA Morrissey, tell us what your goals are for the coming year, coming out of the pandemic, in terms of what you'd like to accomplish in the traffic safety arena as Norfolk DA.
Well, one of the big problems we're facing is having to deal with, we have 3 older motor vehicle homicide cases pending in Quincy District Court. Some of them go back over 3 years. And we've been trying to get those cases tried. There has not been a serious trial in the county for over a year. And we are one of 3 counties that does not have a courtroom that is capable or able, because of social distancing or air quality issues, to hold a trial. So our focus is bringing some people to justice and letting victims obviously have their day in court as well. And so it appears that in early April, we may use Lombardo's in Randolph, and we may have 3 motor vehicle homicide cases that will be tried one after the other. There are some other serious cases, motor vehicle cases, that we have to deal with as well. So that will be one of the things, to get just generally getting the trial session moving, so we can get the pile moving, because we do over 20,000 cases a year in Norfolk County, and some of them obviously, you just mentioned there was 43, I think, death cases, never mind the serious bodily injury, which there are hundreds of those. So getting cases up and running. Trying to reach kids is a challenge. I mean, the fact we're now doing Team Rival more virtual, and we used to have a luncheon for kids and bring in speakers and stuff. I think now we're sending them all a DoorDash coupon so they can have a meal on us, and as part of it. And we also have them compete for some money. That there's a lot of groups in the schools that focus on what we call risky behavior or making good decisions. And so one of the cash awards that we're given for people who participate in Team Rival, we encourage them to put that money towards school programs that they are supporting that will provide, safety for children in the school system. And the challenges, I mean, think about child abuse, for instance. Teachers are usually on the front line of that, but you and I are talking, and we haven't seen each other personally in a long time. And so that touch and feel, that direct conversation, that in their classroom experience is really gone. So it's kind of difficult for teachers who have been on the front lines of a lot of different things. I think it's important to get them vaccinated soon and get kids back into school. But dealing with issues like child abuse, we know that the cases we're seeing that tend to be a little bit more serious, but I think they're vastly underreported because people aren't going to school. They aren't going to the dentists and doctors as much as they did. So there's a lot of the paradigm has changed about, the problems are still there, but how we have to reach them and identify them. And I think that's not going to change for a while longer. And so the fact that you and I do this program on Zoom is just one of those issues. So you got to kind of adapt and adjust and overcome, and that we're going to continue to do that. So that's the challenge, trying to figure out how to educate people, how to reach people, and then how to prosecute people, because we're big believers in prevention and intervention, but at the end of the day, we're still the prosecutors.
Well, this has been a great conversation, Norfolk DA Michael Morrissey. I can't thank you enough for making time to be with us this morning. We wish you and your staff all the luck and all the success in the coming year as you work to protect those in the Commonwealth on the roadway and elsewhere. And thank you so much for your time this morning. For AAA Northeast, I'm Mary McGuire. Have a great day, everyone.